Hello everyone and welcome to a very special episode of Zeng This. It's May the 4th be with you, and the Force is with us on this podcast today. I am joined by a very special guest. I brought him all the way from down the hall. Chet, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone on my podcast?
Yeah, hey guys, May the 4th be with you.
Awesome. Well, he is a big fan of Star Wars. Me and him definitely communicate off mic a lot about, different theories, different just conversations around Star Wars, and he's definitely a fan of it. So I wanted to bring him on for this Force-related discussion on us trying to use our Jedi foresight to see into a possible future for the Star Wars franchise and what possibly may be going on in Episode 8. So, Chet, if you want to tell everyone, why I brought you on, and where can they find you too? Because I'm gonna say something in a minute that might have some people, fun stuff. Anyways, go ahead.
All right, cool. I appreciate it. So I am 50% of a podcast called Down the Hall Podcast. And basically what we do is we saw a stat somewhere that said that a person will spend 115 hours every year just looking for a movie to watch. But you've definitely been there. Late at night, you put on Netflix, you're trying to think, what am I going to watch? And you cycle through for about 15 minutes, and then you land back on The Office or something, right? And you watch reruns. And so we thought, man, why don't we try to help with that? Why don't we try to give people back a movie night? Especially people who only have time for one movie a week. And so each Monday, we deliver like a 30-minute episode, try to be pretty fast-paced, where we talk about a great, in our opinion, great recommendation that week for movie night. And usually we try to find ones that are easily accessible, whether it be Redbox or Netflix or, HBO Go, whatever, all for the purpose of taking back movie night. And we also will tell you a movie to avoid. We'll bash on a movie for about a minute, and we usually talk about a topic pertaining to that movie. So it's meant to be pretty tongue-in-cheek. We don't take ourselves too seriously, but we have a lot of fun. And you guys have been a huge part of that for us. And for me, I love the fact that I get to listen to your podcast and geek out with you guys, because my co-host Rodney does not keep up with any of it.
Yeah. Thank you for that, and thank you for being on. We're going to get right into it, and I'm just going to let you all know now, I don't like saying don't listen to this podcast, but if you don't want anything spoiled for possible stuff that's going to be happening in future Star Wars installments, mainly Episode 8, and also, who people might be or who they might be connected to, I would say wait till possibly after the episode comes out or after you've seen Episode 8 and check out the podcast. If not, if you're down with, theories and all that stuff, that's what this entire episode is based around, is us discussing tons of different theories and what our thoughts are on what's possibly going on in Episode 8 and possibly beyond Episode 9 or other stuff too. So with that being said, the spoiler warning has officially been put out there. So let's get into using our foresight guiding us through with the Force to see what possible.
You've been warned. You've all been warned.
Everyone's been warned, so let's use our Jedi foresight to do our first discussion. I think a question everyone wants to know is, who is Rey? So
yeah, that is the question, man. That's the one that I think will be the defining piece of this new trilogy, right? When you think about the old trilogy, and the big central piece was the reveal that Vader was Luke's father. I feel like the answer to this question is being set up to be the biggest question asked.
Yes, I'm going to kind of actually do a weird thing and start off by saying who I don't think it is, just to start, if that's cool.
Yeah. Process of elimination.
I'm going to go with this, and it might upset some people, but I don't think she's a Skywalker. I don't think she's somehow the long-lost sister of Ben and the daughter of Han and Leia, because I just don't think they'd run immediately back to that well of possibilities for that to be the case. I just don't see it. And I don't think she's related to Luke in any way, like his long lost daughter or something like that. It just seems very out there for me as a theory. her being a Kenobi is, I mean, it's possible they have kind of vaguely hinted at that in the Clone Wars, that he might have had a relationship, and possibly in Rebels that the product of that relationship is in Rebels. I know that there is a theory about that. I don't think that's where they're going with it. There's also, I'm just going to throw this one out there just so I'm getting everything on the table, there's the rumor that she is actually somehow Palpatine's daughter or granddaughter. I'm saying no. I'm just saying no to that because it just doesn't make sense, and it would be weird to go back to that well. So with that, there's some interesting theories on who it might be, and you came up with a pretty good one that you sent me, Chad. So if you want to take the lead on this after I've promptly dimmed everyone's hope of certain characters.
Yeah, sure. So I think I do agree with you. Maybe it's the part of me that doesn't want the overly obvious answer for it to be that she is Luke's daughter. I think initially maybe a casual fan after seeing The Force Awakens might come away from it thinking that, especially if they have a prior understanding of how Star Wars has done things before.
And you're probably meant to think that too. It's maybe they meant to mislead people.
I agree. I agree. And I will say ahead of time, everything that I think about where things are going with Star Wars is all connected to one main theory I have, which we'll get to. But so I think maybe it makes more sense later. But my thing is that I don't think she is Rey Skywalker. But I do think that Han and Leia, Luke, and even Kylo Ren all know exactly who she is, and knew her as a young toddler even, or a young child. And the reason I think that there's plenty of hints at that throughout The Force Awakens, we can get to that in a little bit. But that being said, I don't think she's Rey Skywalker, but I do think he knew her as a child. It led me to think it's possible that she is the child of perhaps two students of his as he was training new Jedi. I'm not totally sold on that, but I'm just thinking, where does it fit for her to be known by him and Han and Leia early on, but yet not be their offspring in any way? And it makes me think that perhaps, Luke came to know who she was by her being the child of two of her students. That's kind of the only guess I have right now.
Okay. I have a theory on it, and this, I already just said, she's probably not related to Ben, but I never said she might not be related to somebody else we were introduced to. And this is kind of, there are holes in this theory, which I may even point out, or I might not, I might see if someone else can catch them, that she and Poe are actually siblings. Now, not the same age, they're not twins. Poe is, of course, the older one. Poe Dameron is, of course, the older one of the two. And the reason I kind of have this theory is because of the comics, actually, that take place after, the comics and the books that take place after Return of the Jedi. Because Luke and Han both knew Poe's parents. Both of them. His mom was an accomplished A-Wing pilot. Very, very skilled A-Wing pilot, by the way. And his dad was a commando who worked with Han. And Luke trusted both of them enough to give them actually part of a kind of Force-sensitive tree that there was only like 2 of that used to reside at the Jedi Temple in Coruscant. So that's kind of interesting on why would Luke trust them so much to give them something that there was only like 2 of. So that's kind of interesting. The other thing is Poe is a ridiculously good pilot. It's definitely shown in the movie that he is really good. And would you even say lucky? But something interesting about luck, right? Chet, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I like where you're going with this, but like you said, as we learn in Star Wars, anytime we hear anything about luck, we realize it's actually the workings of the Force and not luck at all. So that's usually around Force-sensitive people. So
is Poe Force-sensitive possibly from exposure to being around that tree when he was younger? I think it's a possibility because, I mean, he's a good pilot. He might not be realizing he's utilizing the Force, or he is Force sensitive, but I think it could help to contribute to his abilities as a pilot and getting out of certain situations, namely being in a TIE fighter crash in a desert and somehow magically making his way to the Resistance base. As for Rey, on the other hand, Rey is a very good and accomplished pilot as well, and someone who is obviously very force sensitive, possibly from exposure to that tree that was given to Poe's parents or their parents. Like I said, there is some stuff that just doesn't make sense. Poe might not have realized he had a sister. Something might happen to the parents, during that time, and Luke and Han knew about it because of that situation. And that possibly Luke saw in her the potential to be a very accomplished Jedi, and him seeing that made Ben, of course, or Kylo Ren, very upset at the situation, and that might have driven him over the edge to be overshadowed by somebody who he felt was not worthy of the title of the successor to Luke. So that's kind of my long and short of that little theory on that they may be related there.
At the very least, it at least gives an interesting story to Poe. At the very least, the idea that the force-sensitive tree was a part of his family, it could, at the very least, contribute to why he is as talented as he is, as you've explained.
I know. I just, like I said, I kind of stretched out here to look into the comics they've done, some of the other stories that are considered canon, and everything, to try to see if there's any hints within those, to see if that might also help point towards who Rey is. And I do think that, they definitely, Luke and definitely Han, I do agree, knew who her parents was or who she is. It's very obvious that they know. And Kylo knows from some way, either from his dad or from Luke informing him, or him being aware of him through those. So that's kind of interesting, because he definitely, I mean, there's the one scene where he's told, what girl, and then proceeds to have a temper tantrum, destroying a good chunk of the ship. The only problem, and I'll point out my plot hole here, is if he did know that she was Poe's sister, why wasn't anything said when he had Poe captured?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I thought of that initially too.
Yeah.
But it's possible that, it's possible that he doesn't know it's Poe's sister. That maybe, I don't know.
He might just know of her, but not know her origins.
Right. Exactly.
So I guess that, do you got anything else on the possible origins of Rey?
No, just in terms of what her significance, I believe, is to the story, but not in terms of her actual origins. I think of maybe more to say about her potential future with the movies.
All right, well we'll get back to that, I think, in a second, when we kind of do what's going to happen, what we think might be happening in 8 with what we saw in the trailer.
Yes.
So Supreme Leader Snoke, very mysterious character. What do we know about him? Basically nothing, aside from he's the Supreme Leader of the First Order. Now,
right.
Do you have any thoughts on who he could be?
Yeah, so we do know a few things about him. We do know that he has intimate knowledge of where he was around to see the rise and fall of the Empire.
By his own claim, too.
By his own claim. So if he saw the rise, that would have been, call it somewhere after around Episode 3. But more importantly, he saw the fall of the Empire by his own claim. So he also had intimate knowledge of the scene, or the dynamic between Vader and Palpatine and Luke, and how he says that emotion, sentiment, got the best of Vader in a moment of, in a key moment. And so he knows, he has, to me, more knowledge than somebody who just, a neutral observer would have. Makes me think that he had some relationship at some level with Palpatine, going back. My theory, based on some of the books that have come out, we did learn in the Aftermath book series, which is a trilogy, that prior to, or kind of during, in between episodes 4 through 6, somewhere in that range, the Emperor was feeling a draw or a pull from the dark side that he believed was potentially the source of dark side power. And he believed it was coming from deep, unknown, uncharted space. And he even sent out a fleet of researchers, and more than likely some military out there, to go and find it. And he sent some people he trusted, specifically some of his advisors, which we also learned he had a circle of advisors who were, powerful and evil in their own right. But I think that Snoke was one of those. I think Snoke was out in the far reaches of space, sent by Palpatine, or perhaps was already out there and was what Palpatine had sent. What they found was Snoke, perhaps. And so I think that he comes from outside of what was previously the known Star Wars galaxy, and it also might explain why he was able to build up the First Order pretty much unbeknownst, or at least under the radar slightly, of everyone else, and bring them in and become an immediate threat. So that's kind of, I guess, I don't know if I explained it well enough, but I think that he is someone who comes from far outside of what we know to be the Star Wars galaxy. He observed from afar for a long time. He seems to be force sensitive, but certainly connected to the dark side. And I do think that he had somewhat of a relationship or communication with Emperor Palpatine.
All right, I definitely, I'm going to kind of play off that theory because mine kind of has a little bit to do with that. And the advisor thing, that's definitely interesting, that it could have been an advisor that was sent out and came back. If I got that correct from you.
Yeah, I mean, in the books we learned that he had advisors. Now I don't know.
Which you do see them, I think, in Return of the Jedi. If you watch when he's on the Death Star, he does kind of go over to these cloaked figures that are not the Royal Guards. There's these people in these elaborate looking outfits.
Correct.
So that's probably some of the other advisors he didn't throw out to the middle of empty space or whatever he had them
Correct.
going on missions for. So my thing is this: they've introduced, and like I said, I'm pulling strings here, real far strings. They introduced a character named Thrawn in the Rebel show, who comes from uncharted parts of the galaxy. And that's where the First Order kind of got its origins, was from uncharted space. The Empire was helped by Thrawn being a part of their collective to help chart some of that. The Battle of Jakku, actually, I want to talk about the Battle of Jakku, but I don't want to talk about it this early. There was a thing on there called the Observatory, and that was designed to help chart uncharted space. And I'll get back to the importance of that later. But in the books, the Downfall series, they do point out that some of the remnants of the Empire do flee to uncharted space and find a super star destroyer called the Eclipse, which was the personal ship of Palpatine, and it was also thought to be destroyed, but it was apparently destroyed, quote unquote, and was actually fled to space. So that's why I think that they went out there to find Snoke. That Palpatine did have a draw from the dark side to go out there, and when they got out there, they found Snoke out there. And I think personally, he is the dark side. That Vader, Darth Maul, Count Dooku, Dark Jedi, anyone who's used the dark side has only channeled it. He is the dark side, like incarnate, like a physical embodiment of it. That's kind of my theory, is that he's a physical embodiment of the dark side.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think we're going to talk in a little bit, or at least I'm going to mention in the Clone Wars series the 3-episode arc where Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka go to that planet where there's a father, son, and the daughter, and the son is the embodiment of Darkseid. Are you saying something like that?
Yeah. I don't think it's the son. I know that there is that theory going around that it is the son. I don't think it is. I think that it's possible for there to be multiple embodiments of the dark side and of the light. I think that he is an embodiment of it, though. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with that. And of course, he could have observed or watched it. But yes, you did mention the Palpatine felt that call, and that is mentioned multiple times, that he felt some drawing to this uncharted region of the galaxy. So I think that's very interesting. And why would they be putting that in there? I think Star Wars kind of. I think Star Wars at times has a bad poker face, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah.
That they want to keep stuff hidden, but if you put pieces together, they've kind of already shown what might be in the future for stuff, especially since they've redone the canon and what they're intentionally doing now. which I'll get to a very important thing of the canon and why they've and something I have a theory on why they haven't redone certain parts of it when we discuss what I believe will be coming up next. But yeah, so that's kind of my thought on Snoke and everything. I mean, we could be wrong. I don't think he's Palpatine. I don't think he's Mace Windu. I don't think he's Vader. I don't think he's I'm trying to think of there's a few other theories.
You don't think he's Jar Jar?
No, definitely no. Definitely
I guess
no.
there is one other. I mean, there's kind of like 10% of me that believes potentially this other option, which is that the only question I have that leads me to potentially think this is both Leia and Han mention Snoke by name in Episode 7.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
Huh.
So like Han mentions it. I'm sorry, Leia mentions it to Han when talking about how it was Snoke that misled or led Kylo or Ben Solo to the dark side.
Yeah.
And then Han mentions him to Kylo, I believe. And with that, it made me think about the fact that, well, so Snoke is not a secret. He's revealed himself. He's on the scene. Now, maybe that has just been the case since Kylo turned to the dark side, or potentially, just similar to how Palpatine was just a chancellor from Naboo, who then became, revealed himself to be Sith Lord. Ultimately, you wonder if perhaps Snoke was a figure, maybe a political figure, someone who grew close enough to be able to have an in with Ben Solo and begin to manipulate him, and then ultimately come to find out he's dark side. He's on the dark side. So I don't know. I mean, there are things there that make me think potentially he was closer to this situation than we think. But that's part of I think ultimately this question, who is Snoke, is just as interesting to me as who is Rey.
Yeah. So interesting thing, and I'm kind of revealing something I'm going to probably discuss on a later episode of our Star Wars discussion, but in A New Hope, Palpatine's mentioned, the Emperor's mentioned, but he's not really, like, it's just kind of, he's mentioned offhandedly by, I believe it's Tarkin, mentions him offhandedly. And it's one of those things, if you're not paying attention, I think when you're first watching it, you don't catch that. And it's kind of an interesting, well, wait, who's this guy who's apparently more powerful than Vader? And I think that's the thing, is more people in the Star Wars universe are focused on, the First Order, Hux and Kylo Ren, because they're more present figures. Just like in the previous movie, how people are more focused on Tarkin and Vader because they were the present danger. Yeah, the Emperor's a bad guy and Snoke's a bad guy, but they're not the ones that are currently in the process of trying to blow up your planet. So I think that's interesting, that whole thing, that Snoke is known to these characters, and I didn't even catch that, so that's definitely interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess the trailer that we got recently hasn't really revealed anything to answer the Rey or Snoke question, but it did raise more questions.
Yes, it did.
I think a big one being, one, the Last Jedi does refer to one Jedi. It does. It was confirmed that it was supposed to be plural, but the director actually said no, that's actually incorrect. It is singular. So that was confirmed. And it also has Luke saying a very interesting line, which is, all I know is that there's only one truth, the Jedi must end. Why would Luke be saying that? And I think that we're going to get into some very interesting territory real quick with this. So I don't know if you want to go first, or if I want to go first, man.
I think I'd almost prefer you to go first here, just if that's okay, because
no, that's no problem, man. I can have fun with this.
This is the crux of everything for me. His statement, I had this theory before. His statement really solidified it in my head. So when I want to hear what you have to say first, and then I think I have a lot to say.
All right, cool. I'm not going to quote this correctly. I know I'm not, even though I just watched it yesterday, but I rewatched Force Awakens before we did this to see if I could pick out anything else. Snoke makes a very interesting statement when referring to Luke. He refers to Luke as the Last Jedi. So that kind of is like, oh, okay, cool. But then he says he could bring about a new Jedi, like New Order of Jedi. Sort of. Snoke's implying that. And I'm like, why would he imply a new I think that's parentheses new Order of Jedi instead of just saying bring back more Jedi or train more Jedi. Like, that's, I don't know, just something about that line just didn't sit with me right. And that's when it led to, like, now it didn't sit with me right. But before I probably just brushed it off, but I think Luke has discovered the origins of the Jedi, and that the Jedi are supposed to be a balance of light and dark. They are supposed to be gray Jedi. Which that's what I think that this is going towards, is that they are supposed to be a balance of the light and dark. And if you think about it, it makes more sense that way. Like the whole prophecy originally with Vader, which I don't want to bring up the prequels too much, but I'm going to for this. It said that he would bring balance to the Force. Well, if he defeated the Sith, that wouldn't bring balance to the Force. That would mean there's Jedi, there's a ton of light, and no dark. And technically, by the end of episode 3, there's 2 Jedi left and 2 Sith left. So he did bring balance, so he did fulfill that prophecy, if you want to look at it that way. But here's another important thing. They X'd out stuff from canon. And a very interesting thing they have not let be back in canon, to the best of my knowledge, is stuff from the Old Republic. Now, why in the world would they not let stuff thousands of years in the past that has nothing to do with the current movies? Why would they not have that be in canon anymore? Unless the Jedi back then were different from the ones today. The Jedi we've been introduced to only fight with the light. And Jedi were supposed to be, or whatever Jedi were supposed to be originally, were supposed to be a balance of both light and dark. And the problem was, some of them went too far to the light and some went too far to the dark, and it caused a schism or a divide, which I think will be revealed. And that's what Luke discovered when he was going and trying to find, the original temples and stuff like that. Was he discovered this stuff and kind of blew his mind on what teachings were, and that could possibly have led, once again, Ben/Kylo to Snoke, because he felt like Luke was being misled, or that everything Luke taught him was wrong. So that's possibly where that could come from. Another thing, if you want to talk about how Star Wars does a terrible job of playing poker, Ahsoka in Rebels is a gray Jedi. They state very clearly that she is both light and that she walks neither on the side of light nor the side of dark. And she is a very powerful Jedi too, or a very powerful Force user. And they're also very amping that whole thing up of the light and the dark with a lot of the current storylines going on in Rebels. So I'm interested on why are they introducing all this stuff, and why does it seem so important in this? It's because they're trying to let people be introduced to it now, so when it comes up in the movies, it will not be a huge out of nowhere thing. So that's my thought on that. Is that this whole thing is stemming on that, and like I said, the whole thing of what they consider canon and what's not. I think it's very important, the whole fact of why would the Old Republic still not be canon? It's thousands of years in the past. It shouldn't matter unless that stuff is something's the matter with it, because that's not how Jedi and Sith were thousands of years ago. So that's kind of my thing. I don't know if you want to comment on it, or if you want to go into your own, then we can discuss it afterwards.
No, that's a point I hadn't even considered. Why would they not have the old Jedi be considered canon unless the old Jedi are different than what they want to show us that the old Jedi actually were like? No, that's great.
Exactly.
Well, I think what's great, I mean, and so, I'll try to pace myself here, because this is everything with this new trilogy, and probably for Star Wars going forward. But whenever you're thinking through things as a fan, one of the checkpoints you need to put yourself through is, does my theory, how would my theory work cinematically? Because at the end of the day, these are movies.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, if the theory is not something that could actually fit into what you've already seen in the movies or be done in a movie, it's probably not what they're going to do. So I think, though, that as we're talking through this, whether it's what I've read about the actual movies or what I've read about potential rumors of the storyline, this all comes together and all fits. And basically what that is and again, I'll try to pace myself here, but essentially it all comes down to the balance of the Force. And I remember reading somewhere that these new Star Wars movies were going to reshape the way fans saw Star Wars altogether. And I was curious as to what that might mean, and now I'm starting to think I get it. But it does tie everything, I think, really well into it. Going back as far as the prequel trilogy, where There's that conversation Yoda has with I believe it's Mace Windu and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he basically saying like, look, I think we misunderstood the prophecy, the whole prophecy of the chosen one bringing balance to the Force, right? And
Yeah, that was episode 3.
three, right? And you touched on it too. Just the idea of how Anakin, if he had destroyed the Sith, that's not balance. That's an imbalance. And I think talk about what's canon and what's not canon. It's interesting that they decided to do a clean sweep, mostly, but they did keep the Clone Wars TV show in canon. And if you look back at some of the most important pieces of that story, the Clone Wars TV show story, I think maybe the most important piece that came from that was that 3-episode arc where Anakin, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan, they go to that planet where they meet this character called Father, who represents the balance of the Force, and they meet his son, who is the dark side, and his daughter, who is the light side. And it's there that we as fans learn that the father was keeping a healthy yet constant tension-filled balance between light and dark, represented by his son and his daughter. There's this really fascinating scene where he has a one-on-one conversation with Anakin, and it's there that I began to realize that Anakin was the chosen one not because he was someone like the only person in the galaxy to ever bring balance to the Force, but rather because he was the next person in the galaxy to bring balance to the Force, in my opinion, where the father had been doing it and then was passing that burden on to Anakin. So I believe that the chosen one, quote unquote, is less of a person and more of a role that gets played by people generationally. And so as you look at this new trilogy, you wonder, we do know that Luke went off searching for the original Jedi Temple. We do know he had done, a lot of research and reading, and you wonder what he found that caused him to second guess and completely throw out everything he always thought about what he'd been taught, about the Jedi. And it is very possible that he learned that the original Jedi, as you mentioned, were far different than what he had been trained to be. That instead of being so focused on the light, the original Jedi were focused on balance, which means having a healthy respect and a healthy, partaking in both dark and light. And that over time, that became extremely imbalanced by people calling themselves Jedi who focus strictly on light, and people who call themselves Sith who focus strictly on dark. And therefore, it needed to be balanced. And I think that what that means for this trilogy is that we're going to learn that that Luke is probably, perhaps angry or dismayed by all of it, but that Rey potentially is the next quote unquote chosen one. That there was a theory that Rey could be Anakin reincarnated. I don't believe that, but I do think in the sense that she is, meaning that she's the next person to need to bring balance to the Force, and I think it will be balanced not by her actions, not by her having to defeat this or that, but rather be balanced by her essence, her being the balance between light and dark, by embracing both sides. Not Jedi, not Sith, but bigger than that, literally the very being of embracing both light and dark. And I think that's potentially what Snoke could even be referencing when he says a new Jedi, a new type of Jedi, as you said. So I just think it's really interesting how it all plays out. We'll see, but I think it does tie the prequel trilogy, the Clone Wars series, even the original trilogy, and into what they're doing now. And as you said, the Rebels TV show, I think it ties all of it together seamlessly. If the idea is that gray Jedi, if you want to call it that, but really the balance of the Force, black and white.
That is very interesting, and that's definitely, great stuff. I do think that they're building towards that. There's so much evidence out there. I'm trying to remember right now, but there is a character I think they introduced in the previous season of Rebels that is supposed to be an embodiment of the Force, and he's brought like a Sith holocron, and they're like, oh, that's evil or something, and his response is sort of like, it's evil because you say it's evil. It's not. It was made that way by you. To me, it's
Right.
just an item. because he can see it as like it's a balance. Like it's people. Well, in the Star Wars universe, everyone in it are putting labels on stuff instead of actually knowing whether they're and they're saying, oh, that's light, that's dark, instead of knowing what it truly is. And I think that's interesting that they're introducing this so heavily right now in Rebels. And why would they be doing that if not to kind of prime people for that's what's coming?
I completely agree. And I said it needs to fit into what the movies are doing, and I think it definitely does. And I think that one of my other thoughts is that Luke's lightsaber, how it calls, quote unquote, calls to Rey. I think that Luke had possession of the lightsaber again. I think he did, and I think that originally when he was first training the new Jedi, including Ben Solo, I don't think any of this balance between light and dark had really come to him yet. I don't think that. I think that he was training new Jedi just like he had been trained by Yoda and Obi-Wan. And I think he had this lightsaber potentially as like a symbolic passing on to who he considered to be maybe like the next Jedi leader, if you will, or the inheritor, the heir to this role that he had played and was played before him. And I think that perhaps as he's training these Jedi, it's when he's doing his journeys to figure these things out. And as he's going, he learns something that changes everything for him. And when he comes back, I think it's at that point, potentially, that he refuses to give the lightsaber to Ben Solo, let's say, because his mind has been changed about what he's been doing at all, what he's been training them at all, whether or not it's even good. And potentially by that point, Snoke has already been manipulating Ben Solo to where that's a tipping point, and it becomes, a source of anger for Ben Solo, who then leaves only to return as Kylo Ren with the Knights of Ren and wipe out those students. By that time, Luke potentially had been trying to train them differently, and maybe Kylo wanted nothing to do with it.
Awesome. Well, that's definitely great. I mean, there are a lot of questions around that lightsaber. I think something pointed out was that it is in the same box Ben Kenobi had it in, or Obi-Wan Kenobi had it in, which is very interesting because it's like it couldn't have just been someone from Cloud City found it. It had to have been someone who knew who Ben Kenobi was, / Obi-Wan Kenobi, knew who Luke was. Like somebody had to, whoever it was, Luke or somebody else, had to have known the significance of that and got it to her and knew it would be safekeeping with her. Correct. And the whole calling out to Rey thing, I think there's an interesting thing that once again was introduced back in the Star Wars TV shows, testing this out, and also in some of the novels as well. There's a character known as Quinlan Vos, who was part of Legends, but then was brought into canon. He had an interesting Jedi ability to where he could touch an item and sort of see its history.
Right.
What happens when Rey touches that lightsaber? She sees its history. Yeah. Yep. So that's something that maybe not knowing how to control that's what it kind of overloaded her, instead of, whereas if he had grabbed it, it would have shown him what it actually shown him, and he would have understood it. So that's kind of an interesting thing they brought this character back from out of Legends into canon again, who has this very unique Force ability. So why would they bring that character in unless there's a reason to have them in there? Or it could just be there's something bigger going on with that lightsaber that we're not aware of yet. But like I said, we've established that Star Wars does a really good job of seeding and putting stuff out there before it's really taken home with the movies. So
I agree.
So yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of our I mean, there's a lot more stuff in that trailer of just cool stuff, but that line and the whole thing at the beginning where Luke's, saying breathe, and then the what do you see, the light, the dark, the balance, so much more, I think also lends credence to the whole the Jedi are a balance of the Force, light and dark, and not just light. So definitely something. I mean, we'll see. Hopefully, we'll see by this next movie. I hope they don't draw it out to another movie, like Episode 9 actually truly reveals some of this stuff, but yeah, so I mean, this definitely. I mean, I don't know if you have anything to add before we move on to the next thing, but this is, I think, the meat and potatoes of this discussion was right there with the whole.
Oh yeah, it's everything, man. I completely. I mean, for me, the entire conversation around Star Wars, who is Rey, et cetera, all ties back to this conversation about the balance of the Force. So for me, as I'm thinking through my own thoughts on these different theories, it all goes through the filter of, well, how does it play into the balance of the Force, which I believe to be foundational for how things are moving forward. So, I think that's everything. That's the crux of everything, because all the smaller theories around it, I think, tie back to it in some way, one way or the other, that we'll soon find out.
Awesome. So we kind of wanted. I wanted to have some fun. We were discussing off mic, what we wanted to do for this episode. So the next thing is kind of us discussing, where do we think Star Wars is going to head, and that being, we've discussed where the bigger picture is going to head, but they obviously want to do spin-off movies. Rogue One was a huge success, so they obviously want to do more. Han Solo's currently in production. But Chet, I'm just asking, what would you like to see done? And I know there is a lot, like Obi-Wan or Boba Fett and stuff like that. Are these things you'd like to see, or is there other stuff that hasn't even been mentioned yet?
Yeah, well, obviously I'd love to see. I think we'd all love to see an Obi-Wan movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's no chance that it doesn't happen, because it's been talked about so much. I think Disney would be. I think they'd look and say, yeah, there'd be enough traction. We definitely need to do this.
And Ewan McGregor is like on board 110% to do it. Like I'm sure he's just walking around his house right now in Jedi robes, just waiting for that call.
Right, I agree. I mean, aren't we all doing that every day?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think for me, I'll be honest. So everything that I'm a huge obviously I'm a geek in so many different ways, but Star Wars for me is always going to be my favorite franchise. So anything Star Wars, I'm going to give a chance. But I'm always going to be more interested in shows or movies or stories that give a greater understanding to the big picture stuff. I like anthology movies. That's going to be exciting. Even the Han Solo movie, sure. But I doubt that the Han Solo movie is going to have very much to do with a greater understanding of the big picture conflict with the Jedi, with the Sith, with the Force, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, the ones that I would love to see is I think a great, really fascinating one would be potentially, like, there was a book that I read that was not canon, or it was canon but is no longer canon, about Plagueis, and it was so good to me because it was like a Plagueis origin story, but also at the same time a Palpatine origin story. And we know that Plagueis is in fact canon because Palpatine mentions him in Episode 3, but also it gets into a little bit of Darth Maul origin stuff. So if they were to do a movie like that where it told 3 stories in one, or any 2 of those stories, would be really fascinating. And I guess the other thing I would say is if they were to do like a Rebels style show, like maybe even a Netflix show, just kind of documenting Luke's adventures post Episode 6, I think that'd be really interesting too.
That would be. I mean, the comic, they have comics, they have books covering a lot of trying to fill in a lot of the gaps, but I mean, we all would like movies, and there's still a lot of questions left unanswered. I think that would be a cool, like, a Star Wars anthology. Darksiders would be cool to get like the origins of those 3 and kind of get some backstory on that. Possibly throw in some Dooku stuff, because his origins are, kind of not really explained too thoroughly, for the best of my knowledge, within the movies. Other content has, I think, explained it, but that would be interesting to have that too. I know Boba Fett's one a lot of people are pushing for, and I actually, if some executive is listening to this, consider this my pitch for the movie. I got this figured out. Boba Fett to me is a character that when I'm going to go on a rant too, so brace yourself. All right, Boba Fett's a character that when they revealed that he was Jango Fett, it was something to where I kind of sat there and stared at the screen. Like once after the second or third viewing of this, once the excitement died down from the first time seeing a new Star Wars, it kind of resonated weird with me on. So Boba Fett's just the perfect clone of Jango Fett, and all of these clone troopers are just clones of, but imperfect clones technically, because they adjust them, slightly to be more docile or this, that, or the other for the clone troops. But Boba Fett's just a perfect clone of Jango Fett. It made Boba Fett's character less interesting for me, to be honest, because I found out something about him. I think what they need to do with Boba Fett is have it take place to where he's, of course, older, takes place sometime before he makes his appearances in the movies. After, of course, after the he's in Clone Wars, I know, and there's rumors that he might be in Rebels, but have him be. Have you seen? Actually, here's a good question. Have you seen the movie Dread?
No, I do know exactly what it is though, but I have not seen it.
Okay. So I'm going to use that as sort of a template for this. In Dread, you learn nothing about him at all, aside from he's just basically a no-nonsense judge for Mega City. Anyways, I'm going to put this now into Star Wars terms real quick. Have Boba Fett be stuck on some ship with some bounty, and for some reason he can't get off the ship, and the bounty has to be taken alive. And he goes on this adventure with this bounty to where he's having to drag him along and basically protect him from other bounty hunters or, from the people who are trying to get this bounty. And he's like, one-lining it. Not really, never takes off the mask, never really divulges anything, just kind of this hard, just this hard character, you don't really learn anything about him. And then he finally gets off the ship and realizes that the bounty's either dead or alive, and you think that there's been this whole dynamic growing between the bounty and him, that that they've learned something about each other, that there's possibly been some growth for Boba Fett, and he learns that he can be taken dead or alive, just turns around and shoots him.
That would be great.
I would love that, because I don't want to know anything more about Boba. All I want to know about him is he's a bounty hunter, and I just want to see him do an adventure. I don't want to know if he had a family. I'm not, personally, maybe I'm just weird like that. I don't want to know anything more. He's more interesting the less I know about him.
No, that's a great point. I mean, part of his appeal for now decades of Star Wars fans has been the kind of mystique around the character, right? He wears a mask, and he just kind of has, what we know about him is that people are intimidated by him, and that's about it. And I think you're right. I think that's a great way of looking at it. I assume they probably will do a movie, just like I assume they'll do an Obi-Wan movie, because I think fans will clamor for it. But I think there is a chance that we see some anthology films that focus not entirely on just one character, but find a way to focus on more than one.
Or events that happen maybe too. Just
right.
Events.
I mean, like, for example, the Han Solo movie, I think, will have a young Lando. We know that. Boba Fett could be there. Jabba the Hutt. I think that those types of movies might be more inclusive in terms of classic characters and give more context to each of them all at once.
And I definitely think that Rogue One, burst open the gates for this. Like, I remember leading up to Rogue One, there was a lot of speculation about it that, who knows what this could do, where could this go? It might not be good. There's been a ton of reshoots. And in my opinion, that movie blew me away. I'm so excited that will be coming up very shortly for us to discuss on my podcast, because I have a lot to say about it. I think it's a very interesting movie, especially since it kind of came from just 2 lines and a crawl, basically being like, they got the plans, and they did this whole movie. In my opinion, I'm not trying to say that the Endor fight, the Star battle, the Starfighter battle wasn't good. That set a new standard, in my opinion. That was amazing. I love the desperation for the rebels, that this was that they had to push everything they could to just get these plans, and it wasn't even a sure thing, too. That was another thing. Once again, I think the rebels, as they did, in everything else, it's always when they're pushed to the limits to where the characters really shine through, and I thought that was an amazing job. Going into it, you kind of assumed everyone was going to die, and it did happen that way. Sorry, spoiler if you don't know that. I don't know why I'm saying that, though. Everybody died, and it was kind of one of those things where you're sitting there. I was sitting there the whole time the first time I saw it. I'm like, they're not going to kill everybody. There's no way. And they did, and I was like, you know what? I'm not to be morbid, but I'm kind of glad they did. It made everyone, had their moment. Everyone had their perfect moment. Right. It did develop the Force a little bit, where I think the Force was kind of more reintroduced as a more ethereal thing than as a scientific thing. Because I do think that he was able to utilize the Force. He was a conduit for the Force, whereas Jedi used the Force. He was a conduit for the Force to be used through him, if that makes any sense.
It does.
So that was something that I think was introduced there. Vader being in it, I thought was well done. He wasn't. I feel like they could have done that badly to where he was really heavily in it, and it just kind of didn't make. He was in it for what he needed to be, and everything he did was perfect. Tarkin being in it was great because there was this whole struggle with Tarkin, being in charge of the Death Star and everything like that, and I thought that was interesting. The CG, I'm not that bothered by it. If you focus on it, it's going to bother you, but if you just watch the movie to watch the movie, it's fine. So I'm starting to go into my Rogue One, so I'll be quiet. But like I said, that movie definitely opened up a huge opportunity for anthology movies to, I think, work really well, improving that it did nothing but expand the Star Wars universe. It did nothing negative, in my opinion, to like do anything bad to it. So I'm excited to see what they could do next. Possibly, and this is something that I think is going to be covered in the upcoming video game, Battlefront 2, but I would love to see the Battle of Jakku, like, actually happening. Yeah. It is. Yeah. I'm assuming you know some of the stuff about it, 'cause you mentioned it earlier a little bit, and I'm going to kind of talk about it in case somebody doesn't know a lot about it. I'm going to very briefly kind of touch on stuff. It was the last stand of the Empire. They had one Super Star Destroyer left, and they basically, the sky was basically filled with Star Destroyers and everything trying to take down this one last Super Star Destroyer and hopefully end the war finally. Because, I mean, everyone kind of assumes that at the end of Return of the Jedi, the Death Star is blown up, the war ended. It didn't. It had to keep going because there was holdouts, and basically the Emperor's plan was, his plan was, if I die, you all die with me. Like, the Empire falls with me, and I'll take all of you along the ride. So I just thought it was really, just seeing that battle, just everything scattered about Jakku in Force Awakens. I just want to see that battle that took place. And I agree. The previous game, the first Battlefront, you were playing in that battle, but I think that would be an awesome movie sequence to possibly show that. It could, of course, still happen in the main movie, so they get a flashback to that, because I think the Battle of Jakku, and I think Jakku's not done being important yet. Personally, yeah, I think that there's more to that planet.
Definitely, I think that. Sorry to talk over you there.
No, go ahead.
We're talking Star Wars, and I get pumped up. So
I know.
I think that you're right. I think that the Aftermath book series, which I referenced, that style, how he wrote this book, is kind of like touch and go. So it brings in a lot of different viewpoints of what things look like after the second Death Star gets destroyed, and what the implications were throughout the galaxy in different pockets. And one of the stories it touches on is the tension between the political figures who were left for the Empire after the Emperor's death, and who was trying to gain control, who was trying to lead the Empire from there, knowing that there was still a conflict at hand. There's a lot of propaganda going around the galaxy about, how Vader had lived and, how the Emperor had lived, et cetera, et cetera. But I think what would be interesting would be a movie done in that way, because I think that what Rogue One showed us was that the rebels, they kind of had to make tough decisions too. In war, it's not like always so easy to say good versus evil. I think you see Cassian, just straight shoot a guy at the beginning of Rogue One, right? And it gives that kind of gritty sense to the war. And I think that if you were to do a movie with the last stand of the Empire, you could still show that, the Empire ultimately are the bad guys, quote unquote, but that perhaps do it from a perspective where you can maybe even have the fans be a little bit sympathetic towards maybe a few characters within the Empire as they're making their last stand. I think it would bring I think it would be an added element to the Star Wars, universe for the fans.
I mean, not to get too side with the dark side here, but I think the Empire is a very interesting thing that hasn't really been. You don't really see anything from their point of view too much, and I think that would be interesting in a possible movie where you are sympathizing with these people who, like, they were just trying to do, technically, they didn't realize that they were working for anyone evil. They just thought they were doing their right thing to do as citizens of the galaxy to serve their leader and everything. Like, some of them were grown up that way. So I mean, that would be interesting to see somebody maybe questioning that in a movie. Have it from the Empire's point of view. Have it be the Battle of Jakku or other stuff to where they're starting to waver in there. Were we doing the right thing? Is fighting these rebels the right thing to do? Because there was a lot of people who, commanders of ships who were crashing their ships purposely into other ships to just destroy them because they're like, we got to take as many of these rebels as we can, or just giving up on the fight and being like, well, the Emperor wanted us to end it, and just crashing their ships basically straight down into the planet. So, I mean, it had so much emphasis. Like I said, I'm talking about the Jakku because that's the one that we've gotten the most information about recently.
Right.
And like I said,
Yep.
I'm fingers crossed maybe Battlefront 2 will tackle it, because I'm pretty sure there was in the very short trailer, I'm pretty sure there's a scene from that to where it shows a ton of Star Destroyers and other rebel ships in the sky over a desert planet. So hopefully we'll get some. Like I said, I just want to see it I just want to see it on some screen, just some battle situation like that. So I'm excited about that.
You're the first person I know to bring that up, and when you texted me that recently, and I thought it was a great idea.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I mean, do you got anything else for this? Because we have run very long on this, but we've had a lot of fun discussing this, because Star Wars is something that, I mean, we both obviously love. It was It was the first thing I wanted to do, because we definitely want to do more specials every year for my podcast to pick different movie series and stuff. There was no question. I was like, Star Wars. We need to do Star Wars. We need to do Star Wars. Star Wars is going to... And there was zero argument. And it's definitely something that a lot of people really enjoy and love. I mean, we just spent, I'm pretty sure, close to an hour just discussing theories about it and just our love of it.
Yeah. Oh man, the only thing I would say, and I was gonna reference that for you guys. I've really enjoyed the Star Wars series you guys have done. So keep at it. And if I can brag on you guys a little bit. I know Ellie didn't want anything to do with this episode. She doesn't like from what you explained to me, she doesn't like the idea of theories. She doesn't want anything spoiled. That's fine. But if there's, if you want to play just this part of the episode for her, I gotta say, both you guys do a great job with the show. What I love about it is for every topic that a podcast can discuss, there's 50 other podcasts doing the same thing. There's very few examples of podcasts that are unique, and you guys are not unique in the sense that there are definitely other podcasts that talk through. One of the first episodes I heard you guys do was about Batman, and I loved it. There's other podcasts talking about Star Wars, but what keeps an audience coming back, and what has kept me coming back to listen to your show, is when the audience feels like they can connect to the hosts, and that they feel like they're hanging out with friends every time they listen to an episode. And it just so happens we are now friends. But prior to that, I did love the fact that I was able to listen and be like, yeah, I'm hanging out with these guys. And that's to me what makes a great show. You guys have one. Keep at it.
Oh, thank you, man. You and Rodney definitely have a great one too. I enjoy listening into your discussions over a cavalcade of different movies, and I definitely cannot wait to have you guys on. I'll just mention this now. I know it's been mentioned before. They will be returning, I'm sure, not just for our discussion on the top 10 sci-fi war movies, sci-fi and high fantasy war movies, but I'm sure that we'll have plenty of other interactions with you guys. You guys are enjoyable to work with and enjoyable to listen to. I definitely like listening to your picks. If there is a movie that I'm trying to find on Netflix, if I see one I know you guys have covered, it is definitely one that will jump to the top of my watch list then. So
that's great.
So I just want to say, I talk about you guys a lot, and it's because I really thoroughly enjoy your podcast.
Well, we appreciate that, man. We're just trying to learn. We're trying to have fun, but we appreciate it.
And I thank you for your compliments on our show. I'll definitely have Ellie listen to at least that part. Maybe I'll cut together just that part and have it for her separately, so she doesn't accidentally go too far ahead or too far back.
There you go.
Just one more thing I forgot to mention earlier, though.
Sure.
This is the last season of Rebels.
Okay. Yep.
But it has been pointed out that this is not the end of Star Wars cartoons and content like this. Mm-hmm. So I don't know where they could be going next with this. I don't know where Rebels is going to end. I know they have the Forces of Destiny thing coming out, but that is not their intention of what will be coming next. And I thoroughly believe that what we see next from them, I think they have done a great job with the Clone Wars and the Rebels series so far. I think they did a phenomenal job with that. And I will say this, I was very hesitant on the Clone Wars to begin with, because I'll admit this, and this will probably come out in a later actually it will come out in our May episode, because we're talking about stuff that's no longer canon. The old Dexter's Laboratory cartoon version of it, I loved that. Like, I thought that was amazing. They introduced Grievous. It was so well done. I loved it. And I actually went to the Star Wars celebration. I cannot remember which one for some reason off the top of my head right now, but we wanted to go to the me and Ellie wanted to go to the Clone Wars panel, and we were sitting at it, and they were taking questions. I was all excited, and one person asked one that I wanted to ask was, how does this fit into the Clone Wars series that was already done on Cartoon Network?
Right.
And somebody walked up, whispered something into one of the main people up there, was like whispering to them, walked away. He leaned into the mic and went, "That's no longer canon. Next question."
Oh,
And
no.
I am not joking when I said a million voices cried out in pain.
Yes.
I'm not joking, because I thought I was going to be the only one yelling no. You couldn't hear me over everyone else.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that I learned to love the series after that, because I was against it and I watched it and I'm like, you know what, I was hard on this. It's a good series.
Well, the series after that, my opinion is that for every 10 episodes, 7 of them are probably worth skipping, and you'll get 3 out of the 10 that 2 of them have really, really good action and interesting stories, and 1 of them is really, really significant to the big picture stuff.
So you're talking about Rebels?
I'm sorry. I'm talking about the Clone Wars show that came out after, not the cartoon one, but more of the CGI one.
Okay, cool. I just didn't know if you're talking about Rebel. You said the one after it, so I didn't know.
Yeah, sorry. My apologies. Now,
no problem.
With Rebels, I am excited to see how it ends up, and I did hear 2 different rumors about what would be coming out next.
Dude. I mean, this is theory, so we can spoil anything.
It's just rumor. But it will be a cartoon show or an animated show. And one of them was what I had mentioned, which was like Luke's adventures post Episode 6. But I think that's less likely. I think the one that I have heard is something similar to the Old Republic, kind of along those lines.
Interesting.
Yes.
All right. Well, like I said, we've run long. I'll give you a chance again, Chet, or anyone who stayed tuned in this long to do another plug for your podcast and everything, and then we'll sign off.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'll just say very quickly, we are called Down the Hall Podcast. We just give a movie recommendation every week, every Monday. You can find us on Twitter at Down the Hall Guys. But most importantly, probably you would want to go to our website, which is downthehallpodcast.com, where you can kind of get involved in our conversations about movies, and also you can actually scroll down and recommend a movie for us to watch right on the website.
Awesome. All right. Well, I've been Zinger.
And this is Chet.
And may the 4th be with you. Happy May 4th, everybody. We'll see you later.